I was just talking to a friend who's decided not to take a contract because it would just eat up too much time, and they've got enough to keep them going. But, they had that freedom, that flexibility to decide, I need some time and I'm going to turn down this contract. Now they're not going from turning down a contract to no money. They're going from turning down a contract, having more time, they're still earning an income.
In your book, you also had some very interesting suggestions about how employers and communities can develop programs to assist people in becoming entrepreneurs as mature and skilled and experienced workers. And I think of it often. I know here in Boca Raton, FAU, Florida Atlantic University, has a big emphasis on tech incubators and programs for entrepreneurship around younger kids. But I don't see a whole lot with universities. I don't know what employers are doing to help mature workers move into entrepreneurships. I do think that there are some communities, and here in South Florida, I think the city of Boynton Beach is very much oriented towards encouragement of entrepreneurship, people of all ages, but certainly older people. Do you want to say just a bit about what you've seen as programs and to help communities and employers help people move into entrepreneurship?
There's not much, and it's very scattered. I think it's more along the lines of, here's a really good program, and like PBS Next Avenue will write a column about it and say, this should be copied, this should be emulated. So you do see stuff out there. One of the ideas that I had, which you have there's examples in Britain, I'm not aware of any here, which is as an employee benefit the company would pay for you to take your entrepreneurial courses and wouldn't cost you that much money. And it would be kind of a way of, this is recognizing that we might be moving toward a world where certain workers want to go out of the company, but they also may want to come back to the company, going back and forth. So there's some of that going on elsewhere. I'm not aware of it too much that's going on here. Again, I say there's been some examples of co-sharing workspaces that have made more of an emphasis. There has been a conversation, I think this is going to be right, that as we move more toward a world of remote work, more and more companies are going to routinely pay for a co-sharing workspace membership so that people aren't always just working out of their home. They may go in their neighborhood, they may go nearby, not necessarily commuting all the way to the office because they may not be welcome depending on how many people you want in the office at any one time. But isolation is a real issue. So there is a fair amount of discussion. So that would benefit experienced workers also, because it would be a company benefit. But we're really not that far along. The good news is, though, if you want to learn about entrepreneurship, there are so many resources in so many communities. And one of the communities that I write about is St. Petersburg. And when I was there with Kitty and Bevan, for example, some of the advantage, some of the resources that are available there. And there are so many free resources available that anybody who wants to start a business can tap into those resources. And the other thing is, despite this image that entrepreneurs have that they're these loners who, couldn't get along with people, and that's why they had to be entrepreneurs because they couldn't work in an organization, entrepreneurs as a group really want to help other entrepreneurs succeed. I've been stunned and surprised and heartened by their entrepreneurs are often willing to share information with people who might end up being competitors. How do you price your product? How do you market your product? Here's the biggest mistake that I made. And so what has always surprised me is if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur and just say you're thinking about owning some rental properties, why don't you go to all the meetings that landlords have, which they have a lot of meetings, you have organizations, and talk to people about, okay, so what's it like to be a landlord? What are your issues that you deal with? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? And the thing is, people will share their knowledge, and it's part of your research. So there's resources. Those resources are often free. There's lots of entrepreneurs, older entrepreneurs that want to mentor new entrepreneurs. Colleges and universities have not, they've embraced entrepreneurship, but they're largely focused on younger people. But I think, again, if you think about the longer term and where we're going, I'll make my forecast, which is that in 30 years, when you walk on a university campus, on any university campus, it will be a multi-generational institution. That there will not, right now, when you walk on a university campus, it's dominated by the 18 to 28-year-old age group. That's kind of your core, and really 18 to 24. But I think there is going to be a fundamental shift in that just sort of the thing that you're talking about, these are going to become multi-generational institutions, which, by the way, is how they're going to stay alive, because the economics of higher education are changing dramatically.
That's an excellent point. I oftentimes think about the fact that given the decline in young people going on to university, a wise organization would seek other groups of people to market to more. I mean, that would be just a natural thing. And if universities have programs on entrepreneurship for young people, couldn't they just as easily have programs? They don't have to be degree programs for mature entrepreneurs.
There's very much so. And there's a lot of discussion, and, when it comes to change, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of discussion. Here's a logical change. This should happen. This should happen. This should happen. And you keep getting despairing. Then all of a sudden things change very, very quickly. They happen and what tips it over that way. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of discussion recognizing this, and, that we need to be reaching out. And there's a whole thing about nanocertificates, because one of the things that you learn as you get older and you want to stay engaged in the workforce is, one, you probably can't afford, but two, you really don't want to spend a whole year on a university campus getting a degree. But you want a certificate, and you want something that says to an employer, hey, I've done this. And by the way, says to an employer, if you get it, in one town in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida, that it's going to be valuable in Tampa, Florida. So, or it can be valuable in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So this is one of the areas that these nanocertificates, these small certificates, as people go back, and yes, we still want to take that Renaissance Italy class that we never took when we were an undergraduate. Yeah, we'd still like to do that. But what we really want to do is also come back and gain a skill or a certificate that says that we've gained a skill to an employer, that therefore some of the things that you were talking about earlier, they can be less worried about.
Unfortunately, things seem to take longer to come about than they should. And speaking of time, Chris will have to leave in about 10 minutes, I think. So if people have questions, you need to be putting them in the chat. And I don't know whether we have any questions in the chat right now.
Not at the moment.
Okay. So I will ask another question. Chris, staying on the subject of entrepreneurship for just a bit, Encore Palm Beach County has worked for 4 years to develop the resources for people to find work and to volunteer. We don't place people in jobs. We try to refer people to the resources that can help them find work and to direct them to the nonprofits that need their help. We haven't done so much around entrepreneurship. Is there anything you would recommend that we focus some energy on in the coming year?
So what I'd be doing is and you may already know them, you've already done this, but meeting with the people who have the incubators, who have the co-sharing workspaces, who have the accelerators, this sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem, and raise their awareness and ask just what you said, how can we link with you? How can we tie into you? How can we open up to this market? And everyone's struggling right now in this ecosystem, partly because it's harder to get together. But again, people are always, remember, these are entrepreneurial organizations, and I think you would approach them with an entrepreneurial idea about how to expand their market, about how to expand their horizons, about thinking about what might be the opportunities and who, because I think a lot of times the way that these organizations think about older people is, if they're entrepreneurs, they think about them as mentors, which is a good thing. But what you're doing is saying, not as mentors, but is actually coming in and starting a new business on their own. And they want to be part of your ecosystem. And and if they say, well, will that really work? It's a very good Brookings Institution study from a couple of years ago on why urban entrepreneurial ecosystems should deliberately include the older person into that ecosystem. And it makes a very persuasive argument. It has a couple examples from Chattanooga, Tennessee is one of them that I remember. I think there are three main examples that they highlight.